Hello and welcome to another video from Fantasy Football Scout. Today we're going to be discussing double game week options for what probably will be double game week 39. We're still waiting for confirmation on that. My name is Andy, of course, and I'm joined by David. How are you doing?
Yeah, very good. Thanks. It's a very surreal feeling to be talking about double game week 39. I think in years gone by, there's been suggestions of them playing some other games in other countries, a bit like the NFL does. And there have been possibility of a game week 39, and it sounded so wrong. And now it sounds so right, and it's so good that everything's coming back.
Yeah, I can't wait for it. We should say at the time of recording this, FPL is not officially back yet. We still don't have the confirmed fixture list. But obviously the double game week options are not going to change no matter what. So this video is good whether FPL is out or not. I do have the fixtures listed for each team we're going to talk about. The one that's definitely confirmed, and the second one is as if the fixtures are the same as what they were planned before. Obviously just a little caveat that is subject to change. But let's just kick straight off and start with probably the most exciting team, I think, from the double game week, which is Manchester City. So I've got Kevin De Bruyne and Sergio Aguero on the screen right now. Who are you looking at for Man City? Are you looking tripling up? Who are your kind of favourite options for them?
Yeah, I mean, it's in a way it's kind of tricky because it's Man City and you never really know who's going to play. But as I've sort of said a few times on some of the videos we've done since all this sort of came out, it is really, really exciting to be getting thrown straight back into FPL on a Man City double game week. So, you've only got to look at the numbers that they posted in the first 29 game weeks to know that you need to be involved somewhere. So, I mean, there'll be some people that maybe think, oh, it's a bit too risky with some of these options and maybe not decide to go with any. But I think you've just got to, I mean, they've scored 68 goals so far this year. That's the most in the league. The most shots, 542. The most shots in the box, 367. The most big chances, 103. And the highest XG as well, 67.65. So just whoever's going to play, you got to expect them to do well in these matches. And they're going to start off with, we know they're going to play Arsenal, a team that Man City usually do really, really well against. And I mean, that kind of really brings me on to, I think, the first almost must-have player for double game week 39, which is Kevin De Bruyne. He obviously scored twice and got an assist against Arsenal earlier on this season. When we think about the usual caveats for Man City players, a lot of it is usually down to, can we trust that they're going to play? And I know it has been a while since we've been playing Premier League football, but I just can't really see why Kevin De Bruyne wouldn't start both matches, to be honest, or even if he didn't start both, had a heavy involvement in both matches, because there isn't really too many other options who can kind of come in and do exactly what he does. I mean, obviously they've got David Silva, and Bernardo Silva, I guess, is also capable of playing those positions as well. But, with the best respect to those players, nobody can do it like De Bruyne can. I mean, it kind of sounds like stating the obvious, but it is such a long time since we've looked at this stuff that it is always worth reminding ourselves that, obviously so far this season, nobody's created more chances than De Bruyne. And he's had a really healthy number of shots from outside the box as well. So you always kind of feel like with De Bruyne, you're in a really strong position in terms of how likely he is to play. He's got an excellent chance of getting an assist, and also a pretty good chance of getting goals as well. Now, the thing that obviously some people are a little bit worried about is that, because Man City's Premier League, they're not really going to win the league, are they? And they've got the Cup, the FA Cup, and they've got the Champions League to consider. Maybe his minutes might be managed, but I do just find that quite hard to imagine that we come straight back in and De Bruyne is going to kind of be in and out of the team. I think they're just going to have to base everything around him. And when you compare perhaps maybe with your Sterlings, your Sanés, Mahrez, and the Silvas who I already mentioned, they're your alternatives if you want a Man City midfielder. And it's kind of hard to really say that you think any of those are going to be more likely to play. They might be potentially more explosive options, but they have shown themselves to be unreliable this season. You've only got to look at Sterling, who's had really good XG throughout the whole season. I think only Salah has a higher XG score than Sterling this season, but he's returned hardly at all because he seems to have just kind of lost his mojo in front of goal. You've got to go with what you know, and De Bruyne has just been in sensational form, and it's kind of hard to predict that he wouldn't be when everything comes back. So for me, he's an absolute must-have. Aguero is a little bit of a more of a different thing. I think I can understand why you would not go with Aguero, but because he is obviously more rotation prone, I think, than De Bruyne, because of Jesus is available to step in. And Jesus' numbers have been really good this year. I think I'd be strongly looking at Aguero as well, personally, because when he does play, he's just completely devastating. I mean, when you look at his minutes per expected goal involvement, so that rather than just taking a look at the raw figure, that's kind of factoring in the game time. He's got the highest of any outfield player all season, which means when he does play, he's in those positions to shoot very often, to shoot high quality, and it's Aguero, right? So you expect it to be on target as well. So I think, if you want to really attack this double game week, I think if you go in with De Bruyne and Aguero, you're putting yourself in a fantastic position to make excellent ground over other people who might and ah just because of the rotation threat. I mean, what do you think about those guys, Andy?
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing to add for Kevin De Bruyne. Like, I think he's almost the first player on most people's team sheet. I agree. I think he's probably going to be or a very good shout to play both games. Aguero as well. I think if you're on a free hit, I think it absolutely makes sense to go for him and just take the punt that he will play both games. I think there's a very good chance that he gets, at very least, a full game plus, maybe 30 minutes from the subs bench in the other one. But I mean, there's a good chance he starts both of those games. He's still absolutely, absolute best striker in the league still. I don't think there's any real debate about that. So yeah, for me, I like him. I think the problem with the other midfielders is exactly what you said. It's the same thing we've had all year round. It's how can you pick the right one? I mean, if I was going to pick another midfielder, I think it would be Sterling. I think Sané's back, so he can play on the left. Sterling can go back to the right. But, of course, Mahrez can play there. Bernardo Silva can play there. So it gets a bit crazy, especially when Sterling's 11.7. So on a free hit, I think it might be worth the risk. The other guy that I'm looking at is just to go for Laporte and get a defender, because a bit like Kevin De Bruyne, he's about one of the only other players I would say is almost nailed on to play every single match when he's fit. Now, he hasn't played many minutes this year. City have had 10 clean sheets. 3 of them have come when Laporte's been on the pitch. And he's only actually played enough minutes in 5 games to even get a clean sheet. So 3 out of 5, very, very small sample size. But I think most people would agree that when he's in the team, they stand a much better chance of getting a clean sheet. So 6.3 million, again, I'm thinking free hit versus normal team. It might be difficult to put him in your team if you're looking at like Alonso, Trent Alexander-Arnold, Robertson, etc. You're starting to get into quite a bit of money in defence. Not necessarily an issue. But on the free hit, that's where I'm looking at, because I think he's got goal threat. There's clean sheet potential there, especially if it is Burnley at home in the second game. And as we're going to come on to in a minute when we talk about Arsenal, they've not been particularly good attacking-wise under Arteta. They've maybe improved a bit defensively, but in terms of their attacking threat, it's not been great. So I think Laporte's a really good option. I think if you want to punt on another midfielder, then Sterling's probably the one I would go for, but De Bruyne and Aguero, I kind of agree.
Yeah.
Any other players you're looking at?
Yeah, I mean, I think I totally get where people are coming from on Laporte. I mean, he's got a bit of a double game week kind of pedigree, hasn't he? We've seen him usually step up. He seems to be really good at coinciding when he gets his attacking returns with when he has a double game week. It's just this weird ability that he has. I would be perhaps a little bit more cautious on him, though, just because, as you did mention there, he hasn't played a great deal this year. And I do kind of generally get the feeling that Guardiola, when he brings his players back, is rather than kind of just let them run and get on with it, he very much manages their minutes. There's obviously still the potential that we might have 5 subs per match. And we have seen Laporte, kind of have his minutes managed before. And as it's straight back in, this could be the time that happens. But to be fair, as you mentioned, he might do well in one fixture and play 20 minutes in the other one, and you still get a healthy score. So, but with that in mind, for me, I actually think that maybe Ederson is a safer bet, because I mean, it's just inconceivable that he wouldn't start both.
Yeah,
and
agreed.
I suppose that he's not going to have that attacking threat that Laporte's got. But I think he's still a little bit cheaper. And the only thing I will say, and this isn't to sort of poo-poo the Man City defence, for me, it often flatters to deceive in that they're usually very, very good at restricting teams having chances. So when you look at shots conceded so far this season, they've got the best, or the fewest, I should say, 211. They've also conceded the fewest number of shots in the box, 149. And they're not in bad areas of the table for the other stats around that. So big chances conceded, they rank 3rd. For clean sheets, they rank 3rd. And for goals conceded, they rank 5th. So that's not rubbish by any stretch. They're still top 5 in all of those areas, but they will always concede more goals than the number of chances they give up indicates they should. So I would never say that I trust them sort of like cast iron to definitely keep clean sheets. Of course, you've mentioned there, maybe the fixtures work out perfectly for them, but this is just my personal opinion, I'm always just a bit uncertain. And I keep saying in a lot of these videos that I think that defenses will struggle when we come back, because I've been playing football in my garden. I still know how to I still know how to like shoot on target, and I'm no professional. I'm sure the strikers are exactly the same. But how can you possibly? So I'm saying these strikers have been able to practice their finishing at home for 3 months, but defenders can't do that.
Yeah,
Defenders need to practice going up against high quality elite opposition every week, not their son or their daughter. And it's not just that; it's a case of shape and organization. Again, something that they just have had absolutely no training in for 3 months. So I do think that spending more money on defense could prove a mistake when we come back in and we have a look at the first few weeks. If there was fewer clean sheets than usual, I wouldn't be too surprised. So that's always going to be at the back of my mind when I consider premium defenders, I think.
So let's really quickly then, just to finish off on Man City, let's say you're free hitting, would you only get De Bruyne and Aguero, or would you get a third?
I mean, I think if I was free hitting, then you've got to attack it. I think I probably would still, for everything I've just said, I probably would still get Edison, because you mentioned that the fixtures are kind of nice. And I think you've got to have three. If you're going to free hit and it's your one-time opportunity to go in on Man City on a double game week when we don't know if there'll be any others, you've got to have three players. So yeah, I'd go for the triple up, definitely.
Yeah, me too. All right, let's take a look at Arsenal as well then. And so far this year, Arsenal not really been a team that I've targeted at least. I don't think they've been that popular. Maybe someone like Aubameyang. Yeah, is that outside? Let's not start with Aubameyang because I think he's probably going to be the number one on everyone's list. Is there any other players from Arsenal that you would be considering right now, do you think?
I mean, it is really tough. I mean, you've already mentioned there that they haven't improved as much as we might expect, or they haven't become as reliable as we'd like. So, I mean, we've seen them score a fair few number of goals, but a lot of the underlying data that we saw from Arsenal before the suspension of the league was that quite often they were kind of overperforming against their XG. And I know some people hate that expression, but they were basically proving that they were more fortunate. They were fortunate to score as many goals as they did. They should have scored fewer of them. I mean, you've already mentioned Aubameyang. We can come back to him, but I find that he's not in the box as often as I'd like him to be. And yes, he still scores goals, but there are players who are in the box more often than him. But the problem is that we were never too certain who it was going to be playing in that centre forward position. Lacazette was kind of in and out of the team, and Nketiah played as well. There was a brief spell where Martinelli looked like he was going to kind of just hold that position for his own, and then just out of nowhere just was on the bench again. So a lot of uncertainty in their attack. In the centre forward role, I have Pepe in my team right now, and I had enough cause to go for him for the last double game week because obviously this fixture would have happened in the last fixture we had before everything finished. And there's some things to like about Pepe. So since Arteta took over, Özil's created the most chances of any Arsenal player, which actually isn't too surprising. He usually creates lots of chances, but they're never very high quality. Pepe's second on that particular stat. He's only three or four short of him. 15 chances created in that period, but the chances he created were of a high quality. So in that period, Pepe had created more big chances than any other Arsenal player, and obviously therefore had more assists as well. I think he was the only player to have more than 2 assists in that particular run. So, and then he does shoot quite often as well. Does Pepe? I mean, he's not always that accurate. So I think Pepe's a nice punt. I mean, we talked about the free hit, right? I think if you're free hitting and you kind of got room in there, I think Pepe's a really nice differential because he's still not really owned by that many people. But I kind of feel like he's as nailed on as he's going to get now. I wouldn't like put my mortgage on him starting every game, but in a 10-game period, I'd expect him to start 9 out of 10. So potential punt, but of course the caveat's always there that he has some nice stats, but he kind of needs to show a little bit more that he can deliver on it. So I wouldn't say it was essential, but potentially an opportunity for people.
Yeah, I looked at their midfielders and their attack in general. So last 6 matches they played, this is just as a team stat. So they played West Ham, Everton, Newcastle, Burnley, Chelsea, Sheffield United. Not the easiest run, but definitely not the trickiest either. They had 59 total shots in those games. In comparison, City had 107, Chelsea 100, Man United 96. Only two teams were worse than Arsenal over the last 6 games. So it feels like Arteta's come in. He's obviously trying to change the way they play. And long term, I'm sure he'll do a great job at that team, at Arsenal. I just wonder if he's had enough time to really turn them around. And yes, they've had a bit of a break. They can work on stuff, but no one's been training for much of this time, not together at least. Like you were saying, the defensive players have not been able to defend against elite players, etc. And the team haven't really been able to gel. Obviously, contact training is happening now, but there's not that much time till the season comes under. So I think Pepe is probably the best, like you said, option. Ozil, I'd actually quite surprised. I have to remind myself about how many minutes he's played. I mean, he's started the last 10 game weeks, but only 1 goal, 1 assist. It's so uninspiring. So midfield-wise, I think, again, if it was on a free hit, possibly Pepe. It does look potentially like they might play Brighton away, which isn't that bad, alongside Man City away. And like you said, maybe they can get something against that Man City team. Defensively, again, it's just very uninspiring. Like Tierney came in with a lot of hype around him, got a lot of assists in the Scottish Premier League, but obviously he's barely played because of injuries. Only 0.3% ownership, but are we absolutely certain he's going to get that spot from the off? 5.3 million, I just don't know. So I've got Leno, second most saves all season, which might not be the worst shout, 5 million. But yeah, I find, like outside of Aubameyang, I'll let you talk about him. I think I'm struggling with Arsenal to kind of get inspired to bring a player in. On a free hit, I'm sure I will go for 1 or 2 others. But if I was having to hold these players longer term, I don't think there's many I would want outside of Aubameyang probably. But what do you make of him? I guess he's got to be in, right?
I always find Aubameyang really tricky. I mean, people who remember back as far as the usual season and last season as well will know that my opinion of Aubameyang is that he's unreliable, and I don't mean that in a kind of in an offensive sense. I'm not saying he's a bad player. It's just you can never quite predict when he's going to deliver. You know, it's an objective fact that he was the top scoring forward last year in terms of FPL points and was joint for the Golden Boot. So, you know, but there's absolutely no getting around the fact that he is a good player. It's just you never know when that's going to actually, you never know when he's going to score those goals. He can flop against the teams that he should score against, and then he'll go and get a double figure haul against the tough fixture you sold him for. That to me is just, that's pure like peak Aubameyang in FPL. The stats sort of kind of back that up a little bit, especially under Arteta. So, you know, he was 19th for XG in the Premier League in the period that from Arteta's first game to game week 29 when everything stopped. 18 players had a higher XG rating than him in that period, but only 2 players scored more goals than him in that period. So he was massively overperforming against that XG. I mean, you mentioned there the shots the total that Arsenal were actually having was a really small number of shots. So, you know, I generally personally prefer players who shoot more often because it's just kind of law of averages. Players who shoot more often are more likely going to find the back of the net. And it might come down to structure because obviously he is very expensive. And it probably, to be honest, it probably comes down to whether or not you want to have Aguero for this game week. Because if you don't have Aguero, you've probably got enough room to, I don't want to say take a punt on Aubameyang because he is an obvious option and his stats versus the other Arsenal players are still good. But if I had to sort of like choose between Aguero and Aubameyang, I think I probably would still choose Aguero and then not go with Aubameyang if I had to choose both. If I had to choose one of the two, I think maybe there's a way of getting both, but it's just I'm not sure I can trust him. And really, it just comes down to the fact that he doesn't play in that centre forward position. He's still able to kind of score goals on the left wing. But, you know, it's not the same as Aguero, who's going to be at the absolute spearhead of everything that Man City do. So, yeah, I'm sure there's lots of people out there who really like the look of him. And I may even still go with him. But if I do go with Aubameyang, he'll be the player I'll be most nervous about because I never know what I'm going to get from him.
Nervous about Aubameyang? He's been so... I don't know about that. I'm glad we came back to him now because I thought you were just going to be, he's a shoo-in. So fair enough. That's good to have a different opinion. Like I just think he's the obvious pick. I mean, he's so consistent. In fact, if I had to choose between him and Aguero to hold after this, I think I'd actually probably go towards Aubameyang.
I can see that. I mean, yeah. I'm kind of meant in isolation for the game week.
Yeah, fair enough.
Definitely, because Aubameyang will start. I think that's something we probably should just say, comparing him with Aguero. But in just one double game week with nice fixtures.
Yeah, no, Aguero is very explosive. Like we know that, don't we? Yeah. The only thing I'll say about Aubameyang really quickly before we go on to Sheffield United is I did write an article. I can't remember what it was about, but it featured him, and I checked the amount of goals he scored while playing on the wing versus centre forward, and it's pretty good to be honest. Like there's no real negative in terms of actually scoring goals, not necessarily FPL points, but scoring goals. He's still pretty good from playing on the wing, I noticed. So, yeah, I think Aubameyang will be in most teams. What about Sheffield United? Maybe a little bit less looking towards the attacking players here, I would imagine, looking defensively. I suppose the key questions are, one, how many defenders do you get? Do you double up this early in the... I say this early in the season, you know what I mean, this early in Project Restart. Yeah. And which ones do you go for? Who are you looking at for Sheffield United?
Yeah, it is very tricky. I mean, I'm doubled up at the moment. on Henderson and Ender Stevens. I think Henderson is a really, really obvious one. I love Dean Henderson because he pretty much is the exact reason why their defense is so good. So when I won't sort of bore everyone with the exact figures for it now, but if you look at the season as a whole, you will notice that Sheffield United aren't usually sort of in the top 2 or 3 for shots conceded, shots in the box conceded, big chances conceded. Like they do give up not like a high number, but it's not like they're not like Man City or Liverpool where they just completely stifle the opposition in that particular area. And it's all down to Dean Henderson, pretty much. I mean, not to take anything away from the other defenders, they still obviously do a good job too, but he basically is the reason why. So they underperform, or rather, sorry, overperform against their XGC. They concede fewer goals than they should. And if you go and look at Dean Henderson's stats for XG prevented, he's got like by far the highest in the league. So it means that the saves that he makes are of higher quality and are from higher quality shots than any other goalkeeper. And then that means that because he's pretty much the reason why they're not conceding and he's making loads of saves, you've got so much opportunity for bonus. Because when you actually look, so when you're thinking of defensive options at a club that can get more than just clean sheets, his propensity to get those bonus is really, really good. When you look at some of their other players, their outfield defenders, it's kind of harder to really see a too regular stream of attacking returns, for example. A lot of them are quite busy in the box. So, for example, John Egan in the last 6 matches before the suspension was basically second out of the whole team for shots in the box. But none of them were big chances, and all of them were off target. You know, they were sort of like snatched chances from set pieces. So I'm not expecting goals from their defenders, really. In terms of assists, yeah, I mean, there's a potential really to get something out of probably Ender Stevens over Baldock. So in that particular period, Stevens created 4 chances, which is the joint third best out of Sheffield United players, but it still was only 4, which is not a massive number. And big chances created was 1, which is basically joined second. So there's kind of like there's enough there for me to want to maybe have 2, because I do think their chances of a clean sheet are quite good. But I still just think Henderson is out of the back. What would it be, 6? Because they play with the 5-man defence and the goalkeeper. I still think he's the best because of course we can't rely on John Lundstram anymore. So yeah, Henderson for me is a shoo-in. And then and then you got a pretty good chance. I think you're in a pretty good position if you can get maybe a Stevens or a Baldock in as well.
Yeah, the one thing, again, like free hit versus non-free hit, the thing I like about Henderson on a free hit is, especially if you don't already own him like I don't, is you don't have to keep him there because there's going to be 8 game weeks, but he's only going to be able to play in 7 of the matches because one of them's Man United, so he can't play in that game.
Good point, actually.
So on the free hit, you're going to get that double game week out of the way. Obviously, if you hold him long term and you've got a backup keeper, it doesn't really matter. But if you're playing a strategy where you only got one keeper, you kind of want him for the double and not necessarily all the games afterwards. Obviously, if you can keep him up until whenever the Man United game is and then get rid, that's even better. But you don't want to be spending too many transfers on goalkeepers, but it's worth just worth noting that. In terms of defenders, I'm kind of along the same lines really. Stevens, in general, seems like the best one, but there's not a huge amount in it. So if I was gonna, I've got Egan, and I'm more than happy with that, to be honest, because he's only I think he's 4.6 million. I think I got him at 4.5. And I think he's had 6 shots in the last 6 matches. Yes, like you said, they're pretty poor, but in a double game, one of those goes in, and you're absolutely laughing. So Stevens got a bit more, I guess. He's shooting and creating chances. Egan doesn't really create chances at all. But obviously you pay a little bit of a premium for that. I'd still be happy to double up, I think. I think it's Aston Villa and Newcastle. Forget the away thing, I suppose, because there's no fans and stuff. We'll have to see how that plays out. But I'm treating it right now as I'll go with what I know. And Sheffield United have been keeping a lot of clean sheets. And the thing you said about Henderson, I mean, David De Gea had a season like that. I can't remember if it was last season or the season before.
Yeah, I think the season before,
yeah. Yeah, he was massively outperforming. And look, the reply to that is always, well, you won't be able to keep that up. And that's absolutely true. Dean Henderson won't be able to keep this up. But he might do for the rest of the season, and that's all we need. It's a bit like, Joe always brings up kind of Yaya Toure and Ramsey. They'll never be able to keep this up. Well, they did for a whole season, and there's no reason why Henderson can't do that and then maybe drop off next year, or maybe they'll improve defensively themselves. So yeah, attacking wise, it's probably the most uninspiring out of all the teams we're going to talk about. Like in midfield, Fleck at 5 million as a budget option, like maybe an enabler, I think is okay. But Burnley up front is interesting.
Yeah, I was going to mention him.
Yeah, only 5.7. Only 1 goal in the last 7 matches, but his underlying stats are pretty good. I'm sure you've got them written down, but 15 shots inside the box last 6, 5 big chances. 3.22 expected goal involvement. He only actually got 1 goal, so he was a bit unlucky maybe to not get more. Obviously, on the flip side, is he good enough? Is his shooting capability to finish these chances good enough? I don't know. I can't remember all those matches, to be honest, of how he performed. But what do you think about him? Bit of a budget option if you need someone, I suppose, to enable elsewhere. 5.7 is pretty cheap.
Yeah, I mean, we keep coming back to the free hit, don't we? If I was free hitting, then I'll be seriously looking at McBurnie. I know what you mean. Like sometimes with these types of players, when they have good stats, you maybe have to ask yourself, like, is this something that they can? Is this just there's something wrong with them? They can't deliver on them. Had a pretty good year in the championship last year, which obviously doesn't quite carry over. But you know, if defenses coming back are a little bit subpar, then maybe that helps him. I mean, a nice little comparison just to give you an idea of just how much potential there is for him. Between game weeks 24 and 29, I'm just going to compare him against Aguero. So in that period, Aguero 13 shots in the box and McBurnie 12, so only 1 short. And of course, he's basically half the price. They had the same number of big chances, 4 each, and they had the same number of shots on target as well. They both had 5 each. And in all 3 of those departments, are all sort of top 10 within the whole league. So there's a serious potential for value there. Played a fair whack of minutes as well. I think he's pretty much nailed down one of those 2 centre forward slots. The other one tends to either go to McGoldrick or Sharp or Musette. But Musette kind of, it's very obvious that the manager wants to manage his minutes from a fitness perspective, I think. And Sharp is not getting any younger. And McGoldrick is definitely someone who does have trouble, even when he's getting shots on target, actually scoring them. I think he has the most number of big chances missed. We don't have quite the same thing there for McBurnie. I think there's a lot of potential for him. So, yeah, I'm not saying I'm going to get him. I think I own him in one of my draft leagues I've forgotten about because of these stats, because it's a lot easier to kind of take a bit of a punt in one of those. But with free hit, he'll be definitely in the conversation because of his price is so good.
Yeah, and I think one of the matches is Aston Villa, and I can see goals there. Yeah, we're gonna
exactly.
let's just go on to that. I think out of all the teams we're going to talk about, like the 4 obviously double game week teams, I think Villa have probably got the least options that I'm considering. So I'll just get the obvious one out of the way. Jack Grealish, I think, again, on a free hit, really good. Getting him in normally, I still think he's a good option, but the fixtures are quite tough for Aston Villa. The ones they've got left. They are fighting for relegation. Obviously, he had all that stuff that happened in lockdown. There's been a few interviews now where he's kind of saying, look, I've made a mistake. I'll prove, that's not me, etc. And maybe he'll do that on the pitch. Maybe that's what he'll want to get people to start talking about his performances. And for 6.4 million, I've said this on other videos, no one has scored more points than him. I don't see why it can't continue. I know a few people are starting to talk about McGinn, who did well, but when you compare them over the season, I use the comparison tool per appearance, like Grealish just beats him everywhere. And I just think McGinn's very good value at 5.4 million, but for an extra million you get Grealish. I just think he's the one. So that's the obvious one. I got to be honest, I'm not considering anyone else. I don't think Samatta, I don't think I trust him enough. I think I'd probably punt on McBurnie instead if I was going to punt on one of these 2 strikers from these teams. And in defence, I know who you're going to mention, so I've got him on screen. I'm going to let you talk about him, but I just think clean sheet wise, very unlikely. You're relying on attacking returns, and it could be Sheffield United and Chelsea they're playing. I'm really not interested in their defence. But go on, I'll let you talk about target. Go on.
Cool. I mean, I'll come to target. I'll just touch on Grealish. I think I agree with you that he's the big man for them, and he definitely strikes me as the type of person that all of the stuff that went on during lockdown, which I'm not going to comment on personally. I think that sort of controversy that was there is exactly the type of thing that spurs him on to go and do things on the pitch. He really strikes me as almost like a Jamie Vardy type character that just kind of loves to rile people up. Now, obviously, there's not going to be any away fans to wind up, but I still think he'll particularly enjoy that. And just an interesting stat on him as well, between game weeks 24 and 29, last 6 matches before the coronavirus suspension, the only player who created more chances than him in that period in the whole Premier League was James Maddison. So he actually created more chances in that period than De Bruyne. And he played, obviously De Bruyne played slightly fewer minutes, but he's still right up there in a really fantastic area of the table. Now, some people said that, okay, great. If your best player in the team is the one creating all the chances and everyone else around you can't put them away, then clearly that's a problem. But I'm not going to necessarily sign Samatta, but I do think that him coming to the club does make Grealish a slightly better option because he does seem to be a bit of an improvement on Wesley. And when Wesley was injured and they hadn't signed Samatta yet, I think they were playing maybe Keenan Davis, I think, up front. They didn't really, I think they even played Grealish up front for one game. It just wasn't working. In that 6-match period, Samatta was second out of Villa players for shots in the box. but only 2 short of Grealish, and he played something like 150 minutes fewer than him. He only played 353 minutes in that period because he sort of only just signed for the team. So to sort of shoot very far up to the top of Villa's charts for how often he was shooting in the box in short game time shows that he's offering something. And then 2 big chances as well, which is the most of any Villa player, or joint most, I should say. So there's enough about Samatta to me to suggest that Grealish's assist potential is obviously going to be higher. Grealish also top for shots in the box as well. Yeah, so let's talk about Target. He's in my team at the moment. If I was free hitting, I'd definitely be considering him. Yeah, it's tough to really say I want to own him for the whole period, but I do like what he is able to achieve when Villa play 3-4-3, and he's able to link up with Grealish on that left flank because the system allows him to overlap him, and obviously Grealish likes to cut in from that flank. So when he does cut in, that overlap that Target has, I was purely talking about the eye test first. When I was watching primarily the home games, it didn't happen so much in the away games. You would find Target popping up in some really exciting positions, and I still stand by the fact that he didn't get as many attacking returns sort of between January and March was quite unfortunate because we saw him enough times in that almost Alonso area of the pitch, that bit between the edge of the left hand edge of the penalty box and the 6-yard box, whacking shots and crosses across. And the stats that are there, they're not incredible, but they're still interesting enough when you consider how much he was shooting in the box. So he had 4 shots in the box, which was basically the joint most of any Villa defender, and he was joint top for shots on target of all Villa players. So him and El Ghazi were joint top for shots on target. Grealish was kind of quite wasteful. So he's still quite cheap. He's sort of like 4.3, 4.4, I think he is. So like for me, he's not like a tremendous, massive risk if you were to stick him in, maybe on a bench boost or even a free hit. Because I just think that if the fixtures line up nicely enough, like you said, it could be Chelsea to be fair, but then again, their defense hasn't exactly been amazing. I just think that there's the opportunity. He's an opportunity player for you to maybe just end up with a double figure haul you didn't see coming. Because compared to the rest of the Villa team, they do kind of rely on what he offers them going forward. So, yeah, I'm still not 100% decided he's going to stay in my team. I'm still not even 100% decided if he's a good option, but he's definitely an opportunity, and I think people should consider him.
Yeah, I think best option from a bad lot, I would say. I just think on a free hit, it's very tough to fit him in if you're playing 3 at the back because you probably don't want to go completely without someone like Trent Alexander-Arnold. Then you got Laporte to consider, maybe a Sheffield United defender. I mean, it's hard to fit him in, and probably wouldn't want him for the whole season. Although obviously you could use him in rotation, but yeah, I would agree. If you're going to go for a Villa defender, he's probably the only one I would consider. All right, cool. Any other Villa players before we shut this one off?
Well, yeah, I mean, you're right. It's tricky. I mean, El Ghazi just sort of popped up there as an option who's usually quite accurate. But yeah, I mean, he doesn't offer anywhere near as much as Grealish does in terms of. So Grealish offers you goal threat and creativity. El Ghazi offers you a bit of goal threat and not much creativity. So maybe a differential if you're trying to play a massive risk. And I'll just mention Samatta again. Like, I mean, it's hard to fit him into a forward line, but I wouldn't be surprised if Samatta sort of came back from the coronavirus suspension and bagged a few goals. So honourable mentions, but I wouldn't say I'm seriously considering them.
Yeah, I know. I like the El Ghazi shout as a bit of a differential. And look, you might want to go for a couple of Villa players if you're on a free hit potentially. I think longer term, I think the obvious pick is Grealish, Talisman, etc. He is the main man there, but someone like El Ghazi might be a decent option. All right, cool. We'll leave it there. Hopefully everyone's enjoyed it. If you have, make sure to give it a like, subscribe, all that good stuff. There's a few article links as well in the description below if you want to read up a bit more on this. And there's the link to the Football Content Awards. If you want to vote for Fantasy Football Scout for editorial, we're up for that. Otherwise, I'll say goodbye, David.
Yeah, cheers, Andy.
And we'll see you all soon.